Thanks for joining me. This week we're going to be chatting on a couple different topics related to AI security and governance. And the first thing that I wanted to dive into was a follow-up on something we talked about last time, which was a what I viewed to be as an obscure reference in the Trump administration's AI action plan. And just for folks, just so they can, if they're watching the YouTube version or live, they can see what I'm talking about. This is a document that the administration released over the summer, and there was a very interesting section on page 24 about leveraging new and existing location verification features on advanced AI compute to ensure the chips are not in countries of concern. And, I was kind of reacting to this in a somewhat surprised way, saying, how would they know and who would they tell where they are? And it looks like NVIDIA actually responded to this later by saying no backdoors, no kill switches, and no spyware. And basically, there's been some talk, including in this AI action plan, of installing kill switches in NVIDIA devices or hardware that could allow it to be remotely disabled or tracked. And, they came out very hard against this. I have some thoughts on this approach, and, I think it's pretty kind of crazy in a lot of ways, but I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, it's one they actually had to say that there's no kill switches. But I can
True.
throw I could throw a link to that article into the chat so everybody has it. All right, that's sent. Yeah, it first thing that comes to mind is like industrial control systems, right? So like electrical grid, water, whatever it happens to be, because it's not just in NVIDIA. Like, hey, they're telling us there's no backdoors, can't shut us down or whatever it is. But historically, technology has had that, right? And we've seen foreign governments, whether or not adversarial or not, take advantage of those systems to sabotage other entities out there in the world. It's very interesting, one, that they made the statement, and two, somewhat of a relief, right? Um, I say that because I know that the story, I shared the link, it's probably only part of the picture, but then I would ask you, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the administration floated this in their AI action plan and then got a very severe rebuke publicly from the dominant chip provider in the U.S. for AI hardware. And I think it's ironic I mentioned that earlier because previously or currently the U.S. government has mandated a set of backdoors in the current communication architecture through a law called CALIA, Communication Assistance to Law Enforcement Act. And at the end of 2024, there was a huge revelation that the Chinese government had used some of these backdoors put in place through CALIA to hack into the U.S. telecom system and eavesdrop on President Trump and Vice President Vance. And this AI action plan is clearly targeted at China, which I just think is crazy.
Yeah, it kind of opens up a whole can of worms, as far as like what governments can and can't do, but also let's say a corporation's responsibility, um, especially whenever it comes to new initiatives like AI. So, for example, the old what was that nuclear facility in Iran that got sabotaged by the Israelis back in the, what was it, late 90s, early 2000s?
Allegedly, it was Natanz, I believe, by
And
the Stuxnet virus.
right, so like for the sake of national security, you allow privacy related controls to lapse because that's what you wanted to do. And then from the other side, you allow backdoors into uh, highly secure systems so you can sabotage those things. Um, I guess the same logic holds true for what was the Israeli Gazan um, initiative where I think a whole bunch of radios blew up at the same time or something like that?
Oh, you mean the Hezbollah
Yeah,
incident? Yeah. Yeah, so Israel seeded explosives into pagers in southern Lebanon that they detonated all at the same time to
right. I know
kill
it's
a
not the
lot of
same, but like I
Hezbollah
consider it the
people.
same thing where you go into a third party, right, and end up sabotaging the user of that third party system, right? It's very
Yeah.
interesting. Watching it all play out in real time, and then from uh, the standpoint of the AI governance mandate by the United States government, they threw that in there, right? Like just randomly on page 24. And then NVIDIA, to your point, one of the largest corporations um, having to do directly with implementing AI across the globe, basically said no, we don't do that.
Yeah, and from a national security perspective, that's my background, and I'm skeptical about how this would help national security, especially considering that we literally just got burned from inserting backdoors into another technology set. So, to try to do it again, I think
Yeah,
would ask for a lot of problems. That's just my personal view.
yeah, I 100% agreed.
Cool. So you want to move on to SB-205?
Yeah, send one of the links over to the chat.
Yeah, so this is kind of relatively new news. Last week, the Colorado legislature met for a special session. Ostensibly, there were some other issues that they were tackling. I think they did tackle related to budget and things like that. But they also tried to reform, or excuse me, revise this bill, SB 205, which had been passed in 2024. When Governor Polis signed it, he actually criticized the bill while signing it, which is kind of strange to me. I know executives will make signing statements where they say they don't like something or they interpret a certain thing in a certain way. But basically, the whole talk track the entire time was, oh, don't worry about it. We'll amend this before it comes into force. Well, the legislature already tried to do that once, which failed earlier this year. They had this special session to try to do it again, and that failed. All they did was move the enforcement date of the bill to June 30th of 2026 from February 1st. So about 5 month delay in enforcement. And I think the bottom line here is that if a legislature is going to try to pass a bill, the concept of, oh, we'll pass it now in a rough format and then fix it later is frankly crazy.
Yeah, that's the equivalent of fixing your security vulnerabilities after they make it to production, right?
Exactly. It's a
It's already
legislative
too late.
vulnerability.
That's exactly right. Um,
Yeah.
and when I read this article that I sent over and like I did a bit of researching for from a history standpoint, yeah, they were one of the first to pass some type of AI legislation, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so remember previously whenever we talked about Embold and our approach to our AI products and things like that, I said it before, and this is true in this sense. You don't necessarily want to be first to market because you always also might be first to fail. You don't want to be the example that people give, right? Like in a business class or something like that. So you can slow things down, making sure that one, your law is appropriate, and two, it's enforceable, and three, that it's actually clear, right? And so from all the news articles that I read, mayors and congresspeople and things like politicians, that was their number one gripe is it wasn't clear what any of it actually meant.
Yeah. There was a state task force report that came out after the bill's passage, which is kind of a weird time. You would think they would kind of do all the research up front, do the analysis of the bill beforehand. And it pointed out all these things that were not clear in the bill. So, yeah, I mean, I can pull this up because it's quite a enlightening report. Colorado AI Task Force Report 2025. Yeah. This is pretty crazy. What the bill or what this task force said. So this is like a nonpartisan Colorado legislative task force, and I'll pull this up for you. Of course, having some technical difficulties. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, so let me pull this up for everyone, and then I'll share the link with you, or I'll just put it into the chat. All right. Yeah. So this is the legislative report. So this is from the AI task force from legislative council staff for Colorado's legislature. And, they've had all these findings in it which were like, uh, you know, they talk about issues where consensus on changes appear achievable. Then they've got issues where achieving consensus is likely, or it depends on whether or how to implement changes. And then the funny part is issues with firm disagreement where creativity will be needed. And this isn't talking about a law that's like under consideration. This is talking about a law that was already passed. So yeah, they've got all this stuff, like what's the definition of substantial factor? Like what are the mechanics of duty of care? Like should we include companies with fewer than 50 employees? You know, how do we cure non-compliant? Like all this type of stuff that you pointed out is like key to implementing a law.
Right. Crystal had a question in the chat. She asked, "Do either of you think anything will actually be enforced?" Um, so I actually think they're either going to repeal the law until they can specific, or they're going to do a massive amendment to it where they remove provisions from it to make it actually enforceable. Um, I think one of my main concerns about the bill, and I don't live in Colorado, so it's not like it has as much of a impact on me. I do wonder what they were thinking, because from my understanding of it, it would also affect school districts. So I wonder how logically they thought, like, oh, we should implement this burden on school districts who are already understaffed and underfunded to begin with. Wonder what those conversations look like, or if there was going to be some kind of grant program to name like an AI officer at a school or something like that to be in charge of the implementation and the adherence to this particular law. I haven't seen any commentary on it at all. It's just the overall consensus is it's overly burdensome.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of a grant program and AI officers. That would be what you would need to implement this type of law. But what it clearly is an unfunded mandate. It's a mandate from the government saying you need to do all these things, and we're not going to help you pay for it. We're not going to help you figure it out. And interestingly enough, it doesn't exempt the government at all. It doesn't exempt the Colorado state local government. And then you also mentioned the academic side of things. It applies to anyone who's using high risk AI that impacts Colorado consumers. So Colorado students who are applying to schools out of state, if their out of state schools are using a high risk AI system, which, I'm sure they're academic admission systems that are high risk AI, they're going to be impacted. So schools might just be like, hey, we're not taking from anyone from Colorado until we get this figured out, which would be a huge, huge impact. I think I may have lost you. Oh, I got you, Steve. I got you.
Yeah, I just went quiet as I was browsing my article to make sure
Gotcha.
that I covered everything there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll drop this report into the chat, and yeah, let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah, and let this be a lesson to. I guess this is one of those things where the people making the laws are so far behind on current technology and let's just say general threats, right? That they pass something that just doesn't make any sense at all. I'm not saying Texas is perfect or anything like that, but at the same time, this particular bill could be improved on and make it actionable, right? Something actually do for the outcomes that they want to have enforced. Right now, it just looks like it was all for show, really.
Yeah, it's gonna have serious impacts though, which can impact some businesses, and hopefully they figure out a way to clean it up before it goes into force. But just the uncertainty alone is like harming businesses because they don't know where to invest, what to do, and this could definitely have some impacts. You mentioned Texas. We previously talked about that, and that was a pretty tightly focused law, I think, and I think it was quite measured in the approach. Some might say that it was too loose from a regulatory perspective because, like, on the unlawful discrimination side of things, you need to prove that there was an intent to discriminate in your AI system. So just accidental discrimination would not trigger any of the requirements or would not trigger the Texas Responsible AI Governance Act. Whereas for Colorado, there's a duty of care to avoid algorithmic discrimination, which is much, much more difficult. And on that note too, California, they passed a regulation. This is a regulation, not a law passed by the legislature. It was part of their state code related to automated decision systems. And this is not quite as intense as the Colorado law or New York City local law
I don't
144,
know if it's me or you,
but
but
it
I think I
does
lost your
put some
audio and video.
requirements on companies. I'm sorry, was I breaking up?
Yeah, probably for about the last 15 seconds or so. Looks like it's coming back.
Cool.
You made a California regulation.
Yeah, so California passed a similar regulation to New York City local law 144, specifically focused on employment. And I mean, that was interesting because it says, the effectiveness and quality of your anti-bias testing and mitigation efforts will dictate how, basically whether you get penalized or not under the law. But it doesn't say anything about anti-bias testing or what that should look like. It just says do it and maybe we'll let you off, but it doesn't tell you what it is. Where New York City local law 144, the enforcing regulation actually has a lot of detail on the type of bias audit that you need to do, the statistics that need to be included. Interestingly enough, New York City local law 144 doesn't require any action. You could have a bias audit of your algorithm that shows it's way off, and unless you're triggering some other law requirements, as long as you did the bias audit, then you're good under that law.
I think that's one of the things that was mentioned in the Colorado bill, the algorithmic bias, and nobody knew what that meant.
Yeah.
So for anybody watching, do you have any guidance as far as like what to do from a practitioner standpoint when it comes to algorithmic bias? Is this one of those things where you choose a model and you start testing for specific outcomes, and then over time you add in ethnicity, age, condition, whatever it happens to be, to start tracking those different outputs based on the input of a bias, or sorry, an input of either some condition or measurable, I guess, tag or something like that. Those elements that make up an individual, whether it be age or ethnicity, and then compare results, right? So do I actually have a bias in this or not? And this is how I'm going to test it. So, like, how would you go about doing that?
Great question. So, not legal advice by any stretch, but my recommendation for mitigating bias would be threefold. So, first of all, look at the training data if you can. If you have access to it, then see what the source is. If it's from a certain population or certain geographic region, there may be impacts there. Number two is do A/B testing, which you alluded to. If you can compare the results of the system against the traditional hiring process and see what the outcomes are and compare them, then you can identify any unacceptable or potentially even unlawful bias. And then number three would be to do AI red teaming. So looking at the system, seeing if you can inject parameters or corrupt the outputs in a way that would lead to that unacceptable or even unlawful discrimination. So those would be the three measures that I would recommend.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the first company that came to mind was Splix. So, Splix, automated AI red teaming testing company, like we use them and they're phenomenal as far as like an automation and getting your outputs and reviewing those. And that's one thing we do on a monthly basis is review the output of that testing, and then as appropriate, make SDLC changes in the product and push those changes out. Yeah, so I got a better explanation from you than I did that SB-205.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
that was a complaint, right? Like nobody knows what that actually means, right?
yeah, interestingly for 205, there is a safe harbor provision if you do certain things like following a NIST AIRMF or ISO 42001 compliant risk management program, and if it was identified in adversarial testing. So, I mentioned the adversarial testing, but having the risk management program is a defense under certain circumstances for 205.
Nice.
Cool. You want to move to the next topic? I think you had one that you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, I got the AI stethoscope. So I'm always on the lookout for AI related innovations in the healthcare field. Um, and the reason for that is AI is one of those, let's just, for lack of a better phrase, game changers. If you can do it manually, there's a chance that AI might be able to create an efficiency or potentially even do it better, right? Just because of the speed and scale that it can act. So in this one, I don't know all the details. In this one, they added, I believe, a proprietary AI model to a smart stethoscope, and they rolled out let's just call it a smart device to 100 general practitioners in the UK for testing to see if it will actually help physicians identify heart conditions before they're a problem, which is huge. Like that's what AI should be doing, right? Like helping human beings live better lives. And remember, AI is just a tool, right? That human beings can use for efficiency or to make their jobs better or even lives better. So if these things are just a tool, this is a perfect use case. Doctors using tools to help create better outcomes for their patients. I think it's a great use case. I don't going to talk about like UK laws or anything like that. I don't know anything about the UK and the privacy aspects of these things, but I do think it's a huge opportunity overall for the healthcare industry.
Yeah, for sure. And specifically on the heart condition issue, I know you and I were talking about fitness trackers beforehand, and the company that makes mine, Whoop, they actually rolled out a feature that will detect if you have a impending heart condition. And I believe they did go through the FDA medical device review process for that,
Nice.
which was, I'm sure that was beastly. But then they rolled out another feature, which they did not, which was more focused on wellness. And the FDA sent them a letter saying that, hey, this is a medical device. You haven't gone through the process. And I think they're contesting that. They're saying, no, this is not a medical device. We went through it once. We know exactly what it is. But it's kind of a fine balance, because you look at any supplement or anything, it's like, this is not designed to diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. It's like, yeah, it is. If you take vitamin D, like, yeah, it is. You take vitamin C, you're trying to avoid scurvy, right?
Yes.
Basically, if someone, I'm careful because I might trap myself here. But if someone's saying like, this is not medical advice, then it might be a good sign that you should pay attention at least because they, could be giving you a tip that you might want to consider, although it's not that formal type of advice. So yeah,
Yeah,
definitely a lot of improvements.
If anybody tells me that, hey, this isn't medical advice, I'm expecting some medical advice for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Even though they
Yep.
will deny it altogether. Hey,
Yep.
folks watching, that's why terms and conditions are so important. Make sure you
It's true.
update them at least once per year or when you have a major change in the functionality of your products.
Sounds like you were citing from an AI policy right there.
No,
Yeah,
that's
that's
right.
and it's definitely a good practice. And you know, uh, I feel like StackAware helps companies comply with regulations, but at the same time, I can be honest, and sharing that when people say, yeah, this is not meant to treat any type of condition, yeah, they're checking the box, but also, you should take all sources of information into account when you're making decisions. That's
That's
my
right.
advice. That's my advice. That's what I do.
Good advice.
Yeah. Anything else on the stethoscope?
No, I'm excited for it, man. Like
Yeah, it's
they
good.
they should
Good news.
definitely like try and do that. They might be doing the same thing here, but I didn't find any articles for the United States. Yeah, it's huge. Just think of everyday use cases. So me personally, I don't get X-rays every day, but there's someone in the world that somebody's getting X-rayed or a biopsy or something, right? They're getting a scan with some data in it. Um, Huge opportunity for anybody in the medical industry to add AI for those use cases where human beings can be positively impacted by the use of AI. And at the same time, don't just roll it out, right? Just like here's the thing, right? Like define its use cases, right? Like define what the product actually does, create some governance around it, define what you want it to do, and therefore what you don't want it to do. Go through appropriate testing, terms and conditions, very important. Classify all the data going in and going out, etc. Make sure you have controls and compensating controls, and making sure probably the number one thing, transparency inside the company creating this product. That way, the executive in charge of the outcome and the director of engineering, or whoever that might be actually building it, both of them are on the same page about what the product does and what it actually does, right? Specification versus the real world output.
That's an excellent summary of having an AI governance program for healthcare. So, uh, good, good little tidbit there, and plug for the sponsors of our show, StackAware, is we are currently offering an AI risk assessment for healthcare CXOs that we will do in person if you are interested in that. So please go to cxo.stackaware.com if that's something you are interested in taking advantage of, so that you can be as smart on AI governance and security as Steve Dufour is. Next topic, you want to move on?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So the last thing we were going to talk about were the ChatGPT connectors, which have now left beta. And these are super powerful features that allow you to connect to all sorts of different applications: Canva, Gmail, Notion, Teams, and then also custom MCP servers, Model Context Protocol servers. StackAware recently rolled out our own MCP server that you can, if you have an API key, you can connect to. But I think there are quite a few privacy, security, compliance implications for these connectors. Steve and I were talking about this beforehand. If you are using a commercial version of ChatGPT or any version, it will inherit the data retention and training policies of the underlying system. So you may be using, if you're using a ChatGPT free or even pro version, by default, it will be training on your data unless you've opted out. So anything that's pulled into the context window could potentially be trained on. If that's sensitive corporate data, then there could be an issue there. And then additionally, even for ChatGPT Business, used to be ChatGPT Team, but is now ChatGPT Business, that and all other ChatGPT offerings except for enterprise are currently under a court order to indefinitely retain all the information in all your chats, irrespective of whether you have set temporary chats or you've deleted the chat. So that is an important consideration. What else should we talk about there, Steve?
I say turn them off, man. Like, I like so. There's probably going to be good use cases for it to connect, and you can ask questions too. So, like, so for example, if there's a Confluence connector or something like that, where you can connect to Confluence, and you have tens of thousands of pages there with documentation, absolutely ask it the question. But I'm looking at the list right now: Google Drive, Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Contacts, SharePoint, Dropbox, Outlook. Um, this is a lot of things to continue keeping track of as far as what lives there, what's the data classification. There's just so many different things in here. Like healthcare company might, like probably shouldn't, but might use Outlook, right, to deliver communications back and forth between client and patient. Dropbox, tons of companies use that to host private information as well as public information. If you have any type of data being forwarded back and forth between systems, like, oh, like this just seems like a nightmare to me. So, like a really bad one. There's literally too much to keep track of, right? And so like I would turn it all off by default, and then if somebody has the business case of connecting something like Google Drive to ChatGPT, and they can explain it in such a way where, hey, I only need this because 100% of our marketing materials that comes from this third party that uses Google Drive, like we don't use Google Drive, but they do, so we have to access that. Um, and they're constantly updating it. So I would love to just ask ChatGPT like a summary of it, or like where I can find this file or whatever it happens to be. Um, yeah, I would just turn it off. You have a different opinion about it? Like, I don't care if I piss off OpenAI. I think it's a bad idea. Don't do it. It's my advice.
There's definitely a a balance that you need between security and functionality here. And you pointed out a key potential failure mode is, Google Drive. You can execute a BAA with Google and you can store PHI on Google Drive in a compliant and secure manner. But if you have ChatGPT Business or below, you can't execute a BAA with OpenAI. But if you hook up those two tools and you start chatting with your data, you've pulled in potentially PHI into OpenAI, which you don't have a business associate agreement in place with, and you could have an incident there. So definitely looking hard at the functionality that you're enabling is important, and having a good governance program, good way to track this. And I think I'm looking at the enterprise plan. You can disable automatic use. Yeah, workspace owners can disable this in enterprise, education, and business workspaces. So that makes sense. That's good. I guess the key would be if you're doing something like using an MCP server that, like StackAware's MCP server, where you'd want to limit which connectors you could use. That would be key. So yeah, definitely I should dig into, whether you can do a by connector enable disable for this feature.
Hey, whenever you use or you read some like SOC 2 reports or even high trust reports, and in some verbiage from third parties, when I'm trying to conduct business with you, you provide me a report of sub-processors, right? So here's all my third parties, here's the ones that actually hold the data. Would you, like, this is a question for you. If I enabled Google Drive as a connector from ChatGPT and made it part of my workflow, would you add Google Drive and the ChatGPT connector as part of your sub-processor list? to give to that
Dep-
potential client?
Depends on what the definition of subprocessor is, whether it's, a GDPR one, so personal data subprocessor, that might be more limited or expansive in certain conditions. It depends on the definition of subprocessor, but definitely if you're processing data of a customer and, your agreement says that you'll list all subprocessors and who are processing their data, then this would definitely count if that's the definition of anything that's processing a client's data if you're using this workflow.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure the people watching understood what this might mean for them as far as like transparency and visibility and being forthcoming with that information to their clients. Because some clients may not appreciate Google Drive holding their data, right? So they need to be able to know where their data is at any given moment and understand how it's being used.
Definitely, yeah. I would say I know a lot of enterprises they're very Microsoft heavy shops, and that's the enterprise tool of choice. Um, you know, no disrespect to them, but they've had their own foibles of especially of late. So everyone has had some troubles. So we all need to take into account the business requirements and the risk appetite of the organization when making these types of decisions, and just being transparent with your customers, with your stakeholders is key to having good business relationships.
Agreed.
Cool. So you want to go to your question, Steve?
All right, here we go. We're going to role play here. So, and Walter does not know the questions I'm about to ask him. So,
I don't.
Walter, pretend that you're giving the keynote or like a graduation speech to the graduating class. Every single person in front of you is getting a degree in small business management slash entrepreneurship. All of them are about to start some kind of company with AI. You give them your words of wisdom and advice on their graduation day. What does that look like?
Buy a plumbing company and install an AI chatbot that allows you to book appointments and collect payment. That is basically it. I think there's so much potential in the service industry right now for skilled tradespeople, plumbers, HVAC, handymen, carpenters, all that, because it can be just like pulling teeth to do the simplest stuff, like get an appointment booked, what have you. I actually just went to a physical therapist today, and she revamped her website completely that allows you to like go in through a Calendly link type thing and book. And I thought that was revolutionary. Just even small tech improvements like that can really help to get customers in the door. And there are tons of businesses that are not really tech leaning. So if you're a young graduate, then go out and buy a business and rip out the front end and put on something tech enabled and customer friendly, and I think you'll make a lot of money.
It's good advice. I don't know if you and I talked about it before, or if it was me and Crystal. Yeah, those skilled trades, the plumbers, the concrete workers, anything having to do with building and or maintaining. And I think you nailed it. We were going to have some electrical work done, and we called the local company 3 times. We called them to try and book an appointment. Never heard back from them. They might be super busy. On the other hand, it's when a chatbot might be super helpful to automate that portion of it. Like, hey, I need some electrical work done. Here's what I need. Chatbot estimates how long it might take and books an appointment for me. Even if it's 4 months into the future, at least it's booked, right? And then they can prepare and we can prepare for that particular thing. Let's see here. I did have one more question, and I'm going to push further on the first question. These guys are set that they're going to open up their own small business that has nothing to do with skilled labor, and they're going to do AI, and they're going to change the world in some way, shape, or form. They have their mindset on it. You, through your speech, cannot deter them. So, like, what's the one thing that you want them to walk away with? Or it could be three things. I'll leave it up to you, the speech giver.
Whatever you're going to do, don't start building a product right away. Go out and do a service. Find something that somebody will pay you to do. And you can use AI to help in the service delivery, certainly. But do not start building any product until you are very sure that you're doing something that people will pay you to do.
It's really good advice. Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. Because I've heard of a lot of companies doing that where they think, oh, this is a great idea. Um, and I'm probably even guilty of it at some point. Oh, so and so is going to love this presentation. That's my product internally to an executive or my boss or whoever it is. Then they read it and they're like, yeah, that's not what I asked for. Or like, this is. I think the worst thing that somebody ever told me when I presented something to them, and man, this was probably like 20 years ago, and it was just a whole bunch of numbers and stats. Like, here's the current state of this thing. Said, yeah, I can't do anything with these. And then we moved on to the next topic, and I was like shattered, like gut wrenching, heartbroken. Like it really, really stunk. That's really good advice. Well done, sir.
Thanks. Hard one. It took me trying to build a product that nobody wanted to use to figure that one out.
What was your first product?
It was Stackware, the original
Oh, the
incarnation.
vulnerability management stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, which I still use internally.
Well, you got one use out of it. Like,
That's right.
It's you,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Actually, so I've been following you since I think 2018 or 19 or something like that. Like, whenever. What year did you start Stackware?
I started
The
Stackware in
original.
2022, and
Okay.
I started posting consistently on LinkedIn in 2021.
Okay, so it might have been 2021 when I first started following you. Um, yeah, and it had 100% to do with vulnerability management.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Still an interesting problem, still one that has not been solved.
All right. But EPSS still helps.
Oh, it does.
And
We still use EPSS. Yeah.
yeah, and actually, like I went through some I think it was like a Coursera training or something like that, and specifically they mentioned EPSS in there, and so people started adding it to their documentation. It's a huge relief for anybody who has a very large ecosystem with lots of endpoints that need to be managed for vulnerabilities. It's a blessing.
Absolutely.
You got anything for me?
That's all I got. Good chatting with you. Good catching up. I think we had a good conversation. And to all of those who joined, thanks for taking the time. And please like, subscribe, share, and do all that good stuff.